As companies scale, they naturally divide. They split by product lines, geographic regions, or functional departments. This isolated architecture becomes the default state. This division exists for a highly practical reason. A dedicated team maintains strict proximity to their specific customer base. They can move quickly and are held directly accountable for their own profit and loss. But as these units mature, the isolation deepens. Teams begin competing against one another for corporate resources. The company misallocates capital, overfunding legacy products while starving nascent brands that represent future growth. This internal fracture degrades external output. A customer interacting with different divisions receives disjointed, confusing messaging, faces erratic retail pricing, and completely disconnected experiences. The overall brand signal scrambles. The way a company organizes its internal teams dictates how the public perceives its products. When departments isolate themselves to optimize operations, they actively degrade the total equity of the brand. When executives detect this fragmentation, the common reflex is to order an immediate restructuring. The directive is usually to blow up the silos, dismantle the independent divisions, and centralize all marketing authority at the top. Centralizing power strips away the exact benefits the silos were built to provide. The teams lose their local market reflexes, and decision-making paralyzes as approvals bottleneck at the corporate level. Long-term health requires architectural integration. Independent units must remain intact to preserve their agility, even as they are woven into a larger, coordinated system. Instead of removing vertical divisions, companies must engineer a spanning layer. This horizontal framework is designed to systematically replace internal competition with lateral communication. Brand salvation relies on keeping business pillars intact, while engineering the horizontal bridges required to connect them. The physical construction of this spanning layer begins by deploying cross-silo teams and networks. A company might assemble a network centered on a macro trend, like artificial intelligence, or around a massive global retailer like Walmart. By organizing around shared objectives, employees are forced to trade intelligence laterally across their separate divisions. With lateral channels open, the enterprise must implement standardized planning. This requires a sharp focus on process. The corporate center must standardize the templates, metrics, and data systems used across the company, rather than trying to dictate the creative content of the campaigns. A campaign perfectly calibrated for one region will fail in another. Individual silos must retain the authority to adapt the brand vision locally to ensure it matches their specific market conditions. Building these lateral connections and standardizing data forces division leaders to surrender some autonomy. This reliably triggers intense territorial resistance from silo management. Overriding this internal turf war requires visible, decisive authority from the CEO. Without the chief executive actively mandating cooperation, silo leaders will naturally protect their borders. Securing this mandate requires marketing leaders to link the spanning layer directly to enterprise growth. They must demonstrate that building integrated assets is the only way to scale the entire business sustainably. If you lack unified data frameworks and top-down executive enforcement, the spanning layer dissolves. The organization immediately reverts to operating as isolated, competing units. Historically, the chief marketing officer attempts to fix fragmentation by hoarding budget and dictating programs from the corporate center. This aggressive centralization consistently fails. Silo leaders rebel, ignore the corporate mandates, and the organization flames out. Modern marketing leadership requires a structural pivot. To build a spanning layer, the CMO must adopt a series of non-threatening roles. The first role is the facilitator. Instead of issuing orders, they build the shared planning frameworks, establish data banks, and upgrade the marketing talent across the entire company. The second role is the consultant. Rather than forcing their way into division meetings, the central marketing team develops enough expertise that silo leaders willingly invite them into strategy sessions. The third role is the service provider. The central office funds expensive consumer segmentation studies and high-level market research, offering these centralized resources to local teams who couldn't afford them alone. Delivering valuable data and removing operational friction builds trust. It aligns the corporate center with the independent divisions, rather than triggering a corporate immune response. The modern CMO succeeds by becoming the vital utility infrastructure functioning beneath the silos. Even if a company successfully bridges its large product divisions, severe fragmentation can still exist deep inside a single silo. This is the micro-silo problem. Inside one department, the functional teams handling public relations, advertising, and social media operate entirely cut off from one another. These micro-silos fiercely compete for resource priority, budget, and strategic dominance over the brand's message. Legacy advertising agency structures hardened these divisions. Competing disciplines, often managed by different external firms, historically fought to position their specific medium as the centerpiece, resulting in confused public messaging. The structural solution to this internal fracturing is an integrated marketing communications framework, or IMC. Modern IMC requires absolute media neutrality. Teams must abandon the legacy mindset of assigning a lead medium, like television, and forcing all other channels to support it. Channel selection must be fluid and driven by data. Effective IMC requires a singular strategic leader. One authority must coordinate the separate functional teams, pushing breakthrough ideas simultaneously across all channels to serve a unified goal. If an organization fails to integrate its functional microsilos using a media-neutral framework, the broader corporate brand will continually suffer from self-inflicted fragmentation. When we map this structure, we see the complete architecture of synergy. Organizational architecture dictates brand health. The internal structure governs the quality and coherence of the brand signal long before the first line of advertising copy is written. Operating in isolation taxes corporate equity. Internal competition wastes capital, causes messaging drift, and forfeits scale. Structured communication, enforced laterally and across the enterprise, eliminates this tax. Leaving the vertical divisions intact preserves the localized accountability required to move quickly, while horizontal spanning layers extract the required synergy. This integrated structure emits a coherent signal. The output reaching the consumer is synchronized, reliable, and highly scalable. True brand transformation is a structural engineering challenge. When the internal architecture is aligned, the whole finally exceeds the sum of its parts.